Alright, so Renegades. What is all this Renegades business going to be about? Bungie have said that it's Star Wars inspired, but it isn't a Star Wars expansion. Instead, it will be a Destiny universe expansion with influence and inspiration from Star Wars. And I think that is going to be incredibly intriguing. Today, we are going to round up what we know about Renegades. That includes both system changes, sandbox updates, an increase in vault space, which will certainly be nice, as well as what is looking more and more like a return to Mars in some capacities. So if you guys find this video interesting, do us a big favor and hit subscribe as we're slowly climbing towards 600k. That would be very much appreciated, but now let's get into it. One of the interesting things for Renegades is that when we look at the Year of Prophecy card, we can see Destiny 2 Edge of Fate includes a new campaign and new destination in the form of Kepler. Renegades, though, touts the new campaign, but not a new destination, instead a new game mode called Lawless Frontier. Now, that in itself is very intriguing. It doesn't necessarily confirm that there will be no destination associated with Renegades, but if indeed we are returning to Mars, as some of the lore suggests, then that's one reason they wouldn't necessarily call it a new destination. I hope there is an exploration element to it, and it isn't simply a game mode. As for the reason why Mars is speculated to be the destination, though, in a bunch of lore books that we got access to in Edge of Fate, there are many references to a new Cabal faction on Mars, as well as a character with manufacturing clout who are arming a new Cabal faction. And an agent in one of the lore entries says, "I know the Martian Cabal isn't a sanctioned target, but mark my words, it's only a matter of time. Nobody stockpiles this much gear without hedging against Guardian interference. They'll want paracausal weapons sooner or later, and by the time we see them in the field, it'll be too late." There's also a reference to Xur being mugged by these Cabal and them stealing some of his inventory. I'm guessing they stole all of the good rolls that Xur doesn't bring. Lol, only joking, I think Bungie did that. But as well as this Cabal faction, their interest in certain weapons that they're stockpiling on Mars, there's also a reference to a Dredgen and a zone on Mars called Tharsis, which we have previously visited in Destiny 1's Mars zone, Meridian Bay. So there are many lore indications that that's kind of what we're brewing up for in terms of story. And given that the destination is kind of a sandy, deserty space that we see teased in the Renegades trailer, for the moment this looks fairly concrete. In recent interviews with Bungie as well, there were indications that there'll be more of a kind of story setup between now and when we get to Renegades, probably landing with Ash and Iron, that will be a stepping stone into the next major expansion. And Allison from Bungie also said they're telling a continuous story, and we want to make sure that all of the material between Edge of Fate and Renegades is appropriate. And she added, we want Edge of Fate to be the thing that blows the story outwards and connects to lots of different things in brand new ways. We'll be meeting some new characters, exploring some familiar places in unfamiliar ways, again, adding weight to the possibility that Mars is indeed where we're headed. But finally, they say we want to make sure that Renegades feels like a definitively Destiny story. But with lightsabers, sort of. And we saw some of those inside of the trailer for Renegades. A full Renegades reveal will drop on September 9th, immediately before Ash and Iron, and I think that's probably the case, because again there will be a sort of story setup that we'll discover in Ash and Iron in September, which points us into the direction of Renegades, so I'm definitely curious to check that out. I also have a separate video from the other day, where I speak about changes I'd like to see to some of the core systems, and indeed, Bungie's approach to campaign content and rewards on destinations. If you're curious about that, I'll link it down below. One thing we know that Bungie are working on, looking more at the kind of systems element of the game, is power progression. When Renegades drops, the current plan is for seasonal bonus power to be reset. So on that basis, basically we'll go back to 200 power when Renegades drops, which would technically mean slightly less of a grind to get back to the max power level next time around, because we wouldn't have to do those first 200 power levels, and of course we'll make a bit of progress in the campaign. But additionally, Bungie have said they plan to increase the speed of progression for most players with regards to power leveling over the coming months and in the next major expansion. So what we have now in D2 versus what we'll get in Renegades probably will be at least somewhat different. Otherwise, Renegades will get a new dungeon. So while Edge of Fate got the raid and is getting an epic raid, Renegades will have a dungeon which will be included in the main expansion cost. So there won't be a dungeon key associated like we've seen in the past. And they've also said that the reward offering for new dungeons will be expanded to include full weapon and armor sets on par with raids. So basically the loot pool for the upcoming dungeon will be expanded versus what we've seen in the past regarding dungeon content. And that's definitely nice, but something to keep in mind, Bungie did say a little while back that Renegades would list an epic dungeon as part of the content offering. However, they confirmed that this will not be in the form of an epic dungeon activity or difficulty. So while there will be new pinnacle endgame content, and of course it's possible there'll be to more than one difficulty of the dungeon. Epic is not a way that they will refer to this piece of content, which will be a differentiation between Edge of Fate and the Epic raid coming in September versus how that dungeon content will be treated. On top of that, with Renegades dropping, there'll be another reward pass for the game, so if you own Year of Prophecy, you'll get access to that reward pass immediately. If you don't, they can individually be purchased for 1,000 silver. I believe that's what you'd have to do if you decide not to buy Renegades at all. I assume the reward pass will be included in a standalone Renegades purchase, but be sure to check that out if you do pre-order the expansion separately. Another system element that we'll get for Renegades, though, is that we'll get some additional vault space and quality of life features. So firstly, the vault will expand, but Bungie teased other quality of life elements, which I'm not entirely sure what they'll be yet, although we'll probably get announcements soon. On the sandbox side, there will be a few fixes that we'll get for Warlock exotics that Bungie have already outlined. So for Crown of Tempests, no longer stacking on multi-kills, that will be fixed in Renegades. Plus for Rhymecoat Raiment, there's an issue where generated stasis crystals inconsistently apply Devour when Feed the Void is active. And again, that's another one that we'll have to wait for Renegades for in terms of any updates and changes. Of course, beyond Renegades though, there'll be an additional major update which will drop a couple of months after. I think it'll be in March of 2026, with Renegades itself dropping on the 2nd of December. For those folks who were big fans of Pantheon, Bungie have said in the 4th major update of the year, again in 2026, they will be planning for another event that introduces novelty and allows the team to experiment with legacy raid and dungeon offerings to create surprising aspirational challenges. For the moment, outside of those particular updates that we've got, and teasers for what the content may actually look like in Renegades, we can assume there will be strong Star Wars themes in there, such as blaster type weapons. We see those teased in the trailer, as well as a lightsaber inspired weapon, so kind of goes without saying that we'll get items like that. And there'll be additional exclusive rewards associated with the Renegades pre-order. I believe even if you have Year of Prophecy, those haven't actually been revealed yet, so there'll be some additional bonuses which will be automatically granted to Year of Prophecy owners, or indeed for when folks make a standalone pre-order for Renegades. Otherwise, let us know if you're excited to investigate and explore the Lawless frontier that Bungie refer to. I'm kind of looking forward to getting a dungeon as well, and frankly, the grind being a little bit less in terms of power level and getting access to some of the juicier rewards. But the only final thing I would mention is that I could see more than likely a significant number of changes in the current progression systems that we have in Edge of Fate. Bungie have teased that they plan to do that and given us small indications of what that may look like, but there's been a lot of feedback from Edge of Fate, which I think ultimately will make Renegades probably a healthier version of Destiny 2, at least in terms of progression systems. So between now and December, which of course is still quite a few months away, I've no doubt Bungie will be outlining a lot of those changes. So if you want to stay up to date with all of that as soon as we get it, keep it locked and loaded here on the channel, hit subscribe and the notification bell. That way I can keep you up to date. Otherwise, for today, I appreciate you tuning in. Let us know if you're excited for a Star Wars inspired expansion, a return to Mars, or any other components we currently know about regarding Renegades. Otherwise though, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.